Hey, Rick, R&R, here we are, getting ready to share another great moment of life with all of our friends of law enforcement and first responders. It's an exciting day, isn't it?
Back again and at it.
Just smiling, ready to go. Man, it's a great day. It's a wonderful thing. It's awesome. Everything going well in your life?
Yeah.
Staying busy?
We've been real busy, actually. Several opportunities to go around and talk with folks and share. And I think that a lot of people are getting really kind of dialed in and interested in what we're talking about.
Yeah,
and
good deal.
Yeah, I think it's been great.
You've been cutting any trees lately? You've been sawing up some wood?
Always loved doing firewood. And
what's your favorite tree
wood.
to cut down?
Any of them. No, I just prefer to drop standing dead trees, right?
Yeah.
If I can avoid cutting down live trees, I like,
Now, do you have a splitter or do you do it by hand?
Yep.
Some of them are more difficult to split than others, right?
Oh, most definitely.
So what's the most difficult tree to split?
Well, elm is always difficult because it's always real gnarly and fibrous and all tied together and everything. So it's always real difficult. But that's one you definitely don't want to try by hand. But I do like splitting firewood by hand too.
And what's the one you love to split that just pops open?
Maple and oak always pop really well if it's good and dried out, But those are fun. Those are fun to split by hand with a hand axe and go at it. And I tell you, the other thing that's been real fun to get into now too is rehanging axes. That's a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, there's a good Bible story on that, isn't there?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, so the old
guy
axe
borrowed
heads.
an axe and whacking on a tree. There's a verse that says that it's better to sharpen your axe before you cut.
That's right.
Because if you don't, you expend so much energy just beating on a tree, right?
It is right. And that's one that you can prove. You can prove out to be true.
Oh, yeah.
Just by
your
doing
muscles,
that. Yeah.
Your shoulders definitely know.
It'll give you all the fun you can stand.
And really, that's kind of the reason that we're doing this podcast as well. Just trying to help add a little bit to the edge.
That's right. That's right.
To be able to deal with life so coppers can deal with life, deal with issues of life to a deeper level, cut a little deeper.
Well, you're always going to get me fired up when you start talking about axes and sharpening axes and all that. But the real connection to all that is that a lot of people don't understand is that when you don't really as much put an edge on an axe when you're sharpening it as much as you reveal the edge.
Yeah.
You take away
That's right.
just enough to reveal that edge, that cutting edge, and that's what makes it so super sharp.
Some people think that when you sharpen a blade, you go towards the point or towards the edge of the blade.
Right.
But actually, if you do that, you dull it. You roll the steel.
You roll it over. Yeah.
And I know your brain says, well, no, if you go that direction, you're going to dull it because you're cutting into the edge. Mm-hmm. But really, that is you pull the steel back from the edge, and it reveals that.
That's right. So really, that's what we're doing here.
And a little sharpening point while we're on this. I used to sharpen swords and knives and do all these things by hand. I still do some, but not as much as I used to for a lot of guys. But when you have a blade, right, like this is the edge of the blade, there's usually, because they do most of them on a machine, there's usually this ridge right here. If my hands are like that, there's usually this little ridge. The sharpest thing in your house is a razor blade. Go look at that razor blade and see if there's a ridge on it. There's not, because that's what makes it so sharp. So if you'll take, when you're sharpening your knife, especially with the law enforcement people that are doing, if you'll take and just pull that, the further down you pull that ridge and make this line thinner, the sharper you can get that knife to be. And it'll hold its edge, especially like a buck knife, which is really hard still. It'll hold the edge longer, and it will absolutely, you can split a hair with it, with the edge. So just a little sharpening talking point.
Well, and just like we we know, right? Iron sharpens
Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
Well, in life, right, there's these little ridges on our life too, right? And so even though it's uncomfortable sometimes to deal with or talk about or handle, if we go deeper, if we take these little ridges of our life and go deeper and pull them off, we can get sharper. The sharper we are, the better we cut through life, the better we cut through circumstances, the better we cut through issues that come against us and against the law enforcement community, come against first responders. But really, we're the knife we're cutting into society. We're doing what we got to take some of those little things off of us. And that's kind of what R&R is about.
Yeah.
It's sharing points of life through a biblical perspective that helps sharpen our edge. And there's nothing that cuts more wonderful and smoother and quicker than a really, really sharp edge on a knife.
Well, and like you said at the beginning, more efficient and more effective too, right?
Yeah.
Saves you a lot of extra hassle and work and drama and trauma.
I was thinking about something the other day. I do think every once, I know you don't think it, but I do think every once in a while. I was thinking the other day about human beings and officers and what they deal with every day. And the effect that it has on an officer of having to deal with people where you are just lied to every day.
Every day.
Every day. Mm-hmm. And people wonder, I hear sometimes complaints made or, things, you don't believe me. Parents, let me tell you, whenever your teenager says, well, you just don't believe me, just look at them and say, right. Because I used to be a teenager and, you don't trust me. Exactly.
Right.
You're not fully formed yet. You ain't right in the head yet. Mm-hmm. But officers really deal with officers, correction officers, guys on the street, drug I don't care what it is. They deal with people lying day in and day out. Then people accuse them of being skeptical or questioning,
right,
or looking at everybody in a certain way. But you have to remember that officer is lied to umpteen, I'm going to use that word umpteen because times a day.
Mm-hmm.
What's in your perspective, the years that you were on the streets and even now? I mean, now even as in what you do in law enforcement, you're lied to every minute.
Yeah, now I interact with politicians all day.
Right. Thank you very much. Who have agendas and have other agendas, sometimes other agendas against the truth.
Yeah.
Right? So sometimes they just want to deceive, and they think that, well, I used part of the truth, or you have to ask the right question to get the answer that is the truth. But if I can just run you around and keep you from asking the question, or what if you don't even know that question, then you never really come to the truth, or I can deceive or cover, do what's done. What's your perspective of the toll now, the toll that takes on officers throughout the years? Because there is a price in their life that's paid for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like repeated exposure to trauma, right? So if it's repeated exposure to untruthfulness, you inherently build up a resistance to that. One, where you recognize it all the time, right? That's why they say that officers are professional BS detectors, right? Because that's what we deal with all the time. Right. And so, that's why I think across the country you find that politicians are struggling to convince police of the value of some of their positions, because officers detect the falsehoods and the untruthfulness that's underlying many of the points that are being made. And, even when you look at the great national debates that are occurring right now, which I still contend are healthy, as long as they're based in fact. And that's why I always say facts matter, right?
Right. Facts do matter.
If the objective is to get to the heart of the matter and get to the truth of things, I think it's very healthy. If the goal is to never inject logic into the discussion or truthfulness into the discussion, then we're wasting our time. And in a profession where seconds count for officers, they don't have time to mess around with untruthfulness. That's why you get such directness and sometimes bluntness from an officer, is because they can't spend time playing games with the truth,
right?
When they're the ones that are supposed to be upholding that. And so it does take a toll, right? Because then, officers take that home as well, right? And they're immediately identifying deception and where they think, and then you build on to that, right? So now, like you gave the example of a teen son or daughter not being completely forthright, the officer's more apt to just zero right in on that, right? And even though it's not a good thing, make it much more than what it actually is.
Right.
And so you see that play itself out in the home life and with family and interactions. And the biggest area you see it is talk to every officer after they've been an officer for just a while, just a couple of years. Go back and do an audit of how many of their friends they have BP, before policing, and after they started, and you see that change, right? Yeah. And so I think it plays a role, and it begs the question: then what is the truth? And the importance of knowing what truth is, and getting past this whole common discussion now that we have in our country, which is the truth is relative, right? There's my truth, there's your truth, but really there's just the truth.
The truth, yeah. And honestly, one of the biggest lies that the enemy of our soul can tell us is that we don't need God. We're tough. We're tough enough. We're being trained, really, not to believe anybody or really believe anything. And in that, we become our own truth.
That is right. So just take a look at that. That's exactly what's going on across the country. If we can destabilize the truth from folks and get them realizing they can't tell which way's up, which way's down here, then you can convince them of other things and convince them to believe that is the truth.
Right.
And that is what happens, right? If you can lead somebody to the point of them acknowledging that they can't find a true north, they can't find something to then work off of and find their balance and their alignment, well, one, then they'll believe anything. And two, you can move them away. You can turn them away from focusing on the truth.
Right.
And so you get people to begin placing their faith in man instead of God.
GPS. Oh my goodness. The little, back when we had, you had to have you didn't use your phone. You had to have the individual GPS. I had one of those. I was trying to find this hospital because, in what I do every day, of course, I'm sometimes at different hospitals in a particular day. I can be all the way south, be all the way north, many hospitals in Indianapolis. And I'm looking for this one particular hospital I had never been to before, and it's way north. GPS put the address in, and the little cursor highlighted the road, pointed the way, had everything lined out, go all the way. It's like 45 minutes from the office. And trying to get there in time enough to pray for someone before surgery. Well, the GPS was leading me, right, and leading me in the vicinity of the hospital, but the actual address was showing on the complete opposite side of the road. And as I'm traveling up there, getting close to the destination, I'm looking over, and it's just wooded. It's just, and saying make a U-turn on 31 and go.
As you're going to say, I know exactly where you're talking about.
And it's wooded.
Yeah.
Right? Just up a little further and on the right was actually where the hospital was.
Right.
But this thing is turning me in a U-turn, and you are now, and it kept saying, you are now at your destination. You are now at your destination. And so I'm like, well, this can't be right. There's no hospital here.
Right.
Right. Went down, turned around, make a U-turn. Well, no. And it kept saying the same thing. Had I believed it, I would still be there today going around and around in a circle.
That's right.
I had to think further, think deeper, go in a different direction to find the truth.
Yeah.
Once I found it, my destination was assured, right? It's the same thing that we do about life. The enemy of your soul wants you to believe that your destination is here. It wants you to believe that your destination is okay, it's secure, it's not a problem, and it will tell you, make a U-turn. No, go my way. He I'm talking about the devil, will always tell you to come this way, it's better. You're strong enough, you can handle it, it's not a problem. You're the best. And we are gung-ho, right? But he's seeking to make you make a U-turn. He will always use lies or deception to make you in your life make a U-turn, but he'll dump you in a place that's abandoned where there's nothing, because he can't build anything. Satan's not a creator. He can't create. When really the true destination is just a little ways up.
That's right.
It's just you got to think past where we've made this hard U-turn in law enforcement, where we made the hard turn to say we don't need God, we don't need to be spiritual, it's all about our mind, it's all about our body. As long as I got that, I'm okay. No, it's a deeper level than that. You're being lied to.
Same reason why you have a human pilot that can override autopilot on a plane, right?
Thank you very much.
Because invariably technology or these other conveniences that we think know all the answers fail.
That's
and
right.
then you need somebody that can override that because they see what they had their true bearings there and can override that. And that's, I mean, you think about it, that's what this book tells us, right? Is that, and I think officers especially, they know evil. They deal with evil all the time, and they see it. But even sometimes officers still have a difficult time with this whole concept of this concept of a devil, a Satan, whatever.
Yeah, where does all that evil come from?
But I think the what helps connect the dots is when you see that in this book, really the main description of the evil one is the deceiver, and that really is the issue, right? That's his whole MO. That's his whole game is
right.
Deception.
That's right.
And if he can get you to believe things that are not true as though they are true, then he's got you. And he gets you off course and turned away from the truth. And think about what we deal with. It's all about deceiving people and convincing them of things that just aren't true. I mean, how many times do you see people saying, I hear what they're saying, but it's just not
the facts
true.
don't have that.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so I think that's a great way of thinking about this, is that what we really are up against is deception, truth versus fiction, right?
And in our world currently, the fog of deception is great. Oh my goodness. I've never in my life seen so many people inhaling the fog of deception in gasps, where they're almost, it would seem to be willing to be deceived, to get what they want, willing to believe things to get what it really is the lust or the desire that creates a passion for deception.
Right. And when you're talking about lust, I mean, we're talking about, wanting the things of the flesh, meaning of man,
Right.
of the world.
Yeah.
That car, that home, that vacation.
That girlfriend, but you're married.
Sure.
Yeah.
But ultimately what it comes back to is the world and man or God, right? A true,
Right.
a
Who
truth,
are you going to believe?
right?
Yeah.
And, as folks dig into this book, they find that the one said that he wasn't just the way and that he wasn't just the life, but that he was also the truth.
Yes, he's the truth.
And that's the key. And so if we stay focused on him, that really becomes our true north. And the beauty in that, the wonderful part of that not everyone understands is that then you can quickly, just like we talked about, identify deception.
Right.
If it doesn't line up with him, you're being deceived.
You're being deceived. Currently in our nation, of course, officers are being hammered. The whole community of law enforcement, which they're a part of the community as a whole, but I'm talking about the job, is being hammered as being the bad ones when we stand for good, right?
Right.
We stand for righteousness. We uphold righteousness. We keep darkness from overwhelming our cities, our schools, our streets, a person's home, domestic violence. It keeps that line drawn, right, between darkness and light. But at the moment, the lie is that good is evil and that evil is good. Now, I want you to read, I gave you a scripture this morning, and I like the translation you have, which is the New Living Translation.
Sure.
I want you to read that scripture. I'm going to read it in the King James, but I want you to read it in that translation. Jesus is dealing with the government officials of his day.
The politicians.
The politicians. At the moment, they are also the spiritual the spiritual leaders of their day. You know, they had the Sanhedrin, they had the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and they were the elders. They were the judges, the lawyers of the day according to the law, because...
Yeah, see, this is the point that officers don't get is get in this book and you start reading about, it sounds weird, but the Sanhedrin and all these other things, but you'll quickly see, you'll go, wait a minute. I recognize that.
Yeah.
That's the city
The
council.
language of
That's
law.
the faith leaders in the community.
That's right. Well, actually, and in their day, they were the judges and the lawyers.
That's right.
That upheld.
They were the courts.
They were the courts.
Yeah.
If someone stole from you, you took them to the courts at the city gates, and they had a way to judge that. Either you were guilty or you were innocent.
That's right.
And so these men, though, are coming at Jesus in a very harsh way, because in that day they, of course, believed that he was born of of fornication. They did not believe in the Immaculate Conception of Christ, so therefore they believed that Mary, his mother, had fornicated. And so when they're coming now they're getting more intense against his character, but the only thing they can find in his character is what they believe, or what the story they've told about him, and that he was a bastard child, right? Jesus' reply to them when they said that was, well, I know who my father is, but your father is the devil, which is what we were just talking about. The deceiver. And so he is replying to them based on their interaction with him about his character and where he came from. And read that, because it holds some of this deception.
That's right.
Context in it.
That's exactly right. And it's in John 8, so the 8th chapter of the book of John,
right,
beginning in verse 42. It says, Jesus told them, "If God were your father, you would love me, because I have come to you from God. I am not here on my own, but he sent me. Why can't you understand what I am saying? It is because you are unable to do so." Now here's the key. "For you are the children of your father, the devil, and you love to do the evil things he does. He was a murderer from the beginning. And he's saying the beginning.
Now, do officers ever deal with murderers?
Yeah, right?
Is there ever... Yeah, okay.
And so when we talk about a spirit of evil, this is where it's coming from.
And you look in those eyes.
That's right.
Like a detective talked to me, and he said, "Hey, Pastor, what is that?" It's like the guy's looking back at me, but I see something else in there.
That's right.
In his eyes, it gave me the chills. It ran up my spine.
And you're getting a front row seat to the deceiver, the evil.
That's right.
And so it says, he was a murderer from the beginning and has always hated the truth.
What has he hated?
The truth.
Ah.
And think about that. I mean, you see a vitriolic reaction from folks when you simply state facts.
Right.
Really, that are undeniable, right? You could say the sky is blue and have this reaction that, no, it's not, and it's whatever you think it is. No, that is what it is. So, anyways, so he was a murderer from the beginning, and he has always hated the truth. There is no truth in him.
Say it again.
There is no truth in him.
So not only does he hate the truth, but there is no truth in him, period. He's a murderer. He despises the truth. He doesn't abide in it, and there's none in him.
And here's the crux. When he lies, it is consistent with his character.
Ooh.
For he is a liar, and he is the father of lies. So it says, so when I tell the truth, you just naturally don't believe me.
And so as the children of the devil is what Jesus is saying to them, is even when faced with the truth, you don't believe me.
That's right.
Because you're consumed with lies. It's your character. Years ago, I learned from an older preacher, and then later, in the law enforcement community, from some old sergeants, that would kind of take you under their wing and talk with you, and hang out with you. And they would say, when a person begins to tell you or talk to you about being jealous for their spouse, or accuse angrily all these different things, accuse their spouse of certain character, the first person you need to look at is the one that's making all the accusations.
That's right.
Because normally it's out of their character that they are accusing someone else.
Yeah.
We have a tendency to believe that other people are doing what we ourselves are doing, which then escalates, right?
Well, what's that line? Thou protest too much.
Thou protest too much. That's exactly right. And so when you start dealing with humans and human beings on every level, but you're an officer, it can erode a lot of trust in human nature and human character, because everybody, it seems, lies to you. I mean, from the top, you go as high as you want to, all the way down. If you don't have and keep a strong foundation in the truth, it can torment your mind and your everyday walk of life, because you can never find a place of not being skeptical or not looking at people as though they're going to lie to you every single time they open their mouth. And there is a place of truth.
That's right. And it's not relative.
It's not. Oh,
it's set.
It's set. That's right.
I used that line before in some remarks I made, and I loved it. It's God is absolute. He's not arbitrary. And when you're dealing with an absolute, then there is your truth that you work off of and align with.
That's right.
That is it's not a variable. It's the standard within the formula, and you work off of that. But again, I think you have to look. We were talking about cutting down trees earlier, right? Yeah. Look at how much effort is expended by people to try to cut that down and remove that from the equation. Yeah. Think about it. You drive God out of your schools. You drive God out of your homes.
Mm-hmm.
You drive God out of your daily life. We watched during the pandemic, you drive God and people away from their houses of worship, right? From
Right.
collecting amongst one another.
Right.
All of those things add up. And then invariably you have people saying, well, then what is the truth? And here's the key. And then if there is no truth, then there is no moral standard.
No. And there's no peace.
That's right.
See, so when you drive truth away from you, you drive peace away from you. It's not, but you're a peace officer.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody wants to quote the verse out of Matthew.
Mm-hmm. Matthew 5:9.
Blessed, 5:9. Blessed are the peacemakers. Well, you can't make peace where you drive truth from you.
That's right.
There is no, because then there's no foundation with which to stand on.
Well, it's the same question. If you've created an environment where only strife can exist,
Chaos.
you cannot
strife,
bring
yeah.
peace to that
You
because
cannot.
there is no peace.
Then you don't need peacemakers because you don't want it anyway.
That's right. What is peace? Just like what is truth?
Mm-hmm.
And that, if you think about it, fundamentally, that's the question that people can't get around. Right?
That's right.
And you watch people try as hard as they can to get around this.
Can't do it.
And that's ultimately the question. So what is truth?
And it's never been stamped out. Every nation, every dictator, every ruler that has said, we're going to destroy this, we're going to stamp it out, we're going to eradicate it from our society, it's not going to exist. God himself said that his word will never fade away.
Never.
Never.
That's right.
And isn't it amazing that his word has stayed and continued? It is the most printed book in the world, in history.
That's right.
As well as currently, the most printed, read book in the world. So it's not going away, folks.
That's right.
God said it's not going away. He's God. That was a true statement he made. Says comes all the way back. It gives you a place to trust. So when you deal with lies all day long, every day, through everybody, and I mean through everybody, every person, you come back in your time to the truth, it brings peace to your heart.
Well, and that's what people don't want our officers to find out.
That's right.
Is
That's
it's
right.
like a computer, right? Every once in a while, it's going to defragment itself and realign everything. It's going to clear out all the clutter, realign, and our officers have the opportunity to do that, and that's really my hope out of all of this.
Mine
is
too.
that officers are seeing, man, when I can't even figure out what is the truth or whatnot, they know that they have the opportunity if they can get this in their hands,
Yes.
and then get it from here in. Past here into here,
their heart. Yep.
then they've got a sense of balance and alignment. And then when you're confronting all the chaos of the day, you can always have a confidence and have a bearing to stay rooted in.
Right.
Right?
Because David said, I hide my word in your heart so that it aligns me with your righteousness, so that I don't sin, and I'm able to understand and determine truth, righteousness, what I stand for in my profession and my calling, because I hide your word in my heart.
One of the
that
greatest
leads me and
warriors
guides
of
me.
all time.
Greatest. Can't get any more. I mean, man, this dude was bad.
So
to the
what was he
bone.
rooted in?
Rooted in the truth.
That's right.
He loved the word of God.
That's right.
And he wasn't no sissy boy, that's for sure.
Well, and
Or sissy girl.
I think that's what our officers sometimes need to hear, right? Is that I think it's important for them to hear from other officers too that you're not going to find it anywhere else. Try as you might.
Hey, you're not.
You're not going to find it.
And the deception, now here's the deception. The deception is I need this alcohol and that will help me. No, I deal with and work with people all the time that are battling the issues of life because of that alcohol and trying to deal with the residual results.
It's to avoid,
Well, to avoid.
right? And
got it.
but that's the key. That's what people need to hear, right?
Yep.
You're not going to deal with it by that. You're not going to deal with it through many other means, right?
Right.
That's all to avoid
Right.
what you're confronted with.
Right.
The only way you're truly going to take on the travesty of these lives that we are living is you've got to confront that with the truth.
That's right.
And otherwise, you're just avoiding the inevitable, which is at some point in time, you're going to have to answer that question. Every human being does.
Everyone does. Yeah.
And you know why? I think this is what brings it to the reality for everyone. There's one thing that every single one of us ain't getting around.
That's right.
This all comes to an end at some point in time.
It all comes to an end.
Here.
That's right.
And
then there's a longer, like as in eternity.
But it's the great equalizer.
Yep.
That no matter what,
death is the great equalizer.
It's coming.
Yep. It's coming.
And again, everybody spends most of their life trying to avoid that question, that issue.
Right.
That at the end of the day, there's going to be an end to the day for
That's
each
right.
of us. And what happens then? Right?
That's right.
And maybe folks want to believe, well, that's just the end, right? I think I'd rather put my faith in this and take my chances on the truth versus just an opinion and conjecture.
Well, I think that is again more deception from the enemy. If he can convince you that this is all there is,
that's right.
Then you're not prepared.
That's right.
But then he pulls you into his plan, pulls you into his future, which is bleak and not good. Not created for humans, by the way.
So for officers, I don't think there's any debate that there's a spirit of evil. They understand that. Surely then there has to be a spirit of good, right?
Right.
A spirit that overcomes the evil. What is that?
Yeah.
And why wouldn't we dig into that? And that's really what we're trying to do here and keep pointing people back to that.
And why is truth so relevant in a court of law? Why do you have to make sure that your truth in your affidavit and all the things that you type up in your report for charges, why does that have to be correct? Why is that important?
Well, you can't operate without it.
You can't operate without it.
That's right.
The judicial system can't function without it.
That's right.
Judges can't judge properly. Like judges that actually look at cases and look at the history of felons and, like we're dealing with now with the violent felons being released without anybody reviewing their cases or seeing their case history, the issues that we're dealing with deception.
Well, it goes back to trying to distort the context of the context in which everything is operating within.
Right.
I mean, that's really the key, right? We always say that context before content. Well, if you can change the context or make the context not what it actually is,
right?
Well, then you can change the content,
Yeah.
and really the content then becomes relative. And once you drive the truth out of the equation, then nothing else really matters, because then it's just a free for all. And that's what we always say. You drive truth out, you drive God out, you drive law and order out. Then it's the people with the biggest stick win,
or the biggest bucks.
That's right.
And we are pretty sure that the biggest bucks are those who then step into the power role and determine, or have already determined, that we're just little weak-minded people and we don't really know how to live life. And
what we just read here is that's exactly what Jesus was confronting. Was that right there?
Yep.
The people of the day that were in the positions of power that were trying to drive truth out of the discussion. Because if truth comes in, it shows that they were flawed and fell well short of what everybody thought they were supposed to be.
Right. And they were using their position and their role to get rich.
And so he calls them out.
He calls them out. As a matter of fact, another place he says, you take the burden off of your back, but you add it to those who are already burdened.
That's right.
You put more pain on those who come to you in pain.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus said himself, "I didn't come for the well, or for those who think they're healthy and well and don't need anything. I came for those who realize they're sick.
That's right.
I came to help those who actually want to be helped,
Mm-hmm.
because you were supposed to do that in your role and in your office of one of the spiritual leaders of the day, but you're not. You're actually using their pain to make you even more wealthy or more empowered." What a pitiful attitude in a human being, to use someone else's deep pain in their life, that they want to be set free from the yoke and the burden and the bondage of the issues of life. And instead of removing those things, you add more to it.
That's right.
Instead of, when you are empowered to take rocks out of their bucket, but behind your back, you're holding an even bigger boulder
Mm-hmm.
to add to their life so that you can alleviate your own.
And keep them weighed down.
And keep them weighed down. And that is a truth.
Well, and think about it.
That is the truth in our society, even today.
If there's really no value in this, why do so many fight so hard to keep it from you?
Oh, absolutely. And continue to deceive you. I read a little story. Okay, joke time here for just a sec. Pause. But it's relevant. This professor stands up in philosophy class and he says, he's coming against God and the Christian faith. He says, all right, if there's a God in heaven, if there's a God, let him knock me out of this chair. And of course, everybody, all the students, they're young college students, they're sitting there. He says, I don't believe in God. If there's a God, let him knock me out of this chair. He says the second time. And third time, I said, if there's a God, let him knock me out of this chair. Well, this young man who happened to be a Marine is going through college, on scholarship. He gets out of his chair, he steps up, and he just punches the professor right in the side of the head, knocks him out of his chair on the floor, knocks him out. He comes to, and he says, why did you hit me? I said, if God exists, let him knock me out of the chair. He said, well, I was sitting there and God spoke to me and told me that he was busy to help him out, and he sent a Marine.
That's right.
And did the
Hands
job.
and feet.
He did the job. Okay. Simplified all the Marines that are listening right now, but I kind of like that story. He said, he sent me on assignment. And as a disclaimer, no, we do not desire any violence to happen to any professors of philosophy class.
Well, but our officers
No matter
are
how
called.
ridiculous they may be.
Our officers are called to carry out the truth and uphold the truth.
That's right. So, like that Marine,
Mm-hmm.
God has called you.
Mm-hmm.
God's not so busy he can't take care of it. God is taking care of it through you, through men and women who do this job.
That's right.
So like the Marine, God is present. He is present through you if you will accept his presence in you.
Yeah, and I think the big question for officers that may be watching this is, they say, okay, yeah, maybe there is something to that. Then, how did they take the next step? How did they say, okay, if there really is this truth, how do they find out more of the truth? How's the truth get revealed to them?
Well, a great thing about this book is that it's not an, I can't ever touch that book. I mean, how many times I have people say, if I came to church, Pastor, lightning would strike and burn the building down. No, it wouldn't. Quit saying that. This book is the Word of God. This book reveals Jesus. This book reveals truth. This book reveals, not a truth, the truth. And so the closer we get to this book through reading and being in this book, the more we understand what was on God's heart and his mind when he sent Jesus to die for us. So first of all, that's number one. Second of all, which actually I probably would say I gave you number two first. But number one is to first simply be willing to accept Jesus Christ as the truth. Mm-hmm. And his death, burial, he's not still hanging on the cross, folks. He rose again, mm-hmm. right? But his life, how he lived, what he said, what he left in humans when he left, other beings, apostles, disciples, those who listened to him and believed him. And it even took some of them some time. They had to have eyewitness. Now, I think you deal with in your job every day what we would call eyewitnesses, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And so eyewitness is very important to being able to prove a case. It's an evidentiary existing thing that you deal with every day. Well, this book is full of eyewitnesses. Mm-hmm. That's one thing to argue with just a fable or an imagined thing. But when you're dealing with facts, again, like you said, right? You verify, believe but verify. And when you have eyewitness reports, which people, judges and lawyers and officers of the law and they've researched this to prove it's wrong and have come to know and understand that it's absolutely true, using the systems of the court and what we do in law enforcement, right? Mm-hmm. They've come to determine with all the eyewitness, you could stand this book in front of a jury pool and they would have to say every time this is true. Factual testimony. So, number one, you give Jesus your heart. Well, how do I do that? Rip it out of my chest? No, you do that by talking to him. He didn't make it hard. He actually made this very easy. Mm-hmm. By confessing him and to him and speaking to him and inviting him into your life.
So you acknowledge that he is the truth and that you want that in your life.
That you want a heart of truth.
That you're going to make that your true north, not all this other junk.
Yep.
And you mentioned it, but it's really a key point, especially for our officers who deal with death every day. We know that it's coming for everyone, but here is one who conquered that.
Right.
And it can sound like quite a story, but if there's somebody who overcame death, the one thing that equalizes and that we're all going to face, but he overcame it, you can believe I'm going to be listening, wanting to know more about that.
Thank you very much.
And I think that's really the key. And again, just get in here and verify it. Read it for yourself. But you're right. I mean, really, the first thing is you just have to believe and invite that into your heart, an openness, a willingness, not to have it all figured out, but just to believe and say, I'm going to follow that, and I'm going to find out more about that.
You know, as a pastor, chaplain, and I hear a lot, well, I just can't believe all those stories. Mm. Jonah is one of the big ones, right? Mm-hmm. I just can't believe that a whale could swallow a guy. The Bible uses the word a big fish. And mm-hmm. Of course, the big fish we see currently are whales is the biggest, I just can't see where that could be true. So I just don't know. I just think these are a bunch of made up stories. Well, research your current stories in the news, and you'll currently find a story of a gentleman who was fishing who was swallowed by a whale.
Yeah.
And was in that well for some time, and then the whale spit him out. Mm-hmm. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't mm-hmm. it? Mm-hmm. And he survived it. He didn't come out dead. He survived it. So there are things that are relevant every day in this book to my life that guides me into pure truth.
Right.
And helps me stay steady, founded, and like you say, pointed towards true north. Mm-hmm. So prayer is simply talking. You and I are talking to each other today,
Right.
but prayer is really talking. 1 Timothy gives several different types of prayer: supplication, petition, intercessions. But prayer really is talking to God.
Well, and I think for our officers, it's as simple as really just saying, I've tried it my own way. I don't have this figured out. I've screwed it up. Can you help me?
There you go.
That's it.
Pretty simple.
And I'm going to believe that you can, and I'm going to try to find out more about what you said about me in here. You know, that's I don't really share that often, but every time I open my Bible to read it, that is my prayer every time. I pray to God, make me who you say I am in here.
In here, that's right.
Through your Holy Spirit.
That's right.
And in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Right?
Yep. That's
the one
a great.
that I believe
it's a
in.
great way to
That's it.
start. It's a great way to start.
And let him go to work.
And then don't try to have a depth or an understanding of all the knowledge in the first week of making that commitment. And it really is a commitment.
You just said you don't have it all figured out.
Right.
I don't think you're going to open this and have it all figured
Right.
out.
No, and so you don't try to do that or put pressure and more stress on you trying to do that. This is a walk of life.
Well, and here's
every day.
A great line. It's often been said, but it's pretty cool to hear. You don't read the Bible reads you.
That's right.
And so the great secret is, as you read this and you don't even completely understand it all, you're going to see and read things at different times in your life that's going to speak exactly to what you're going through. And it's going to hold up a mirror to you. And it's going to show you where you got some room for improvement. Remember, you can't do it.
Right.
You got some room for improvement, and he's going to improve on you. He's going to refine you. But you got to let him. He's not going to force it on you.
That's right.
You got to let him. And all you got to do is read it, invite him in. Just like I said, make me who this says, who you said I am.
You say I am.
Not through an evil spirit.
That's
but through,
the truth.
That's right. Through the Holy Spirit. That's that good spirit.
Yeah.
And you pray that in the name of the one who you put your faith in. It really is as simple as that.
It really is.
And he is the way, the life, and the truth.
And the truth. That's right. And the more you get into him and into this book. Now, some guys think, well, then I'm just going to be a softy then. I'll just be man, some of the most powerful men on the planet have been God-loving, God-filled men and women. Tough. Mm-hmm. Tough as rawhide. Great cops. Great military men. Tough as rawhide. You know, even George Patton, the great General George Patton, he read his Bible every single day.
Well, wisdom begins with a fear of the Lord.
There you go.
That's it. Fear God.
And the Bible says, with all you're getting, get that wisdom and understanding. That's right.
Well, maybe as we go into future episodes, we can dig more into the Word, talk on some specific scriptures like we've been doing.
Yeah.
I think it's just important for folks watching to maybe see and hear it, but then maybe now start picking this up, their own Bible, and just kind of following along with us and seeing what we're saying. Because, like we always say, don't take our word for it. What we're saying, go get in here and read it and see if what we're reading is what this actually says.
So let me give officers a very quick little practical thing to do at home. I'm going to do that right now. When you listen to your family, whether it's a husband, a wife, or a child, when you're at home, I teach a thing called the 3 F's of life and conversation. Faith, feelings, and facts. Officers live their whole life and career dealing with facts. Sometimes it means the other 2 areas suffer. But when your family talks to you, or your friends, or your children, listen and key in just like you would when you're doing an interview or you're standing at that car window listening for what's coming out of that person's mouth to see if they're telling you the truth. I want you to take a moment, if you will humor me. as a man of God, let me tell you what to do for just a moment. Can you handle that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Listen to the key words about feeling or fact. Feeling, faith, or fact. Most confrontations with your spouse come about because you missed those key things. When your wife says, I feel like you're never at home, the report or reply quickly is, well, I'm at home. I was home yesterday. I was home 4 hours. Where were you? You weren't here. You were out shopping. You were off. You didn't key in on a very important word she said. I feel like. So your spouse is having certain feelings. Can you win an argument by spouting facts? No, you will lose every time. Well, no, that can't be right. I'm a factual person. They didn't say you are never home. They said, I don't feel like you're ever at home. If you try to deal in that confrontation or that conversation with fact before looking and listening for the feelings and dealing with the feelings first, you'll have lots of arguments in your marriage and in your home with your teenager, with your child. Listen for the words, I believe. I believe. People will fight you over what they believe.
Mm-hmm.
People will go, they'll roll around in the church parking lot over what they believe, tear their church pants up over what they believe. I believe. Listen for that. That's a key phrase. That tells you what's in that person's heart. It's out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if you only listen for facts, you will have lots of arguments and confrontations with family, friends, children.
I'm guessing there's some folks relating to that right now.
Yeah, there are. And I just want to throw that out to you today. If you just let me throw that out to you. When you're at home, be conscious of those other key words, feeling and fact. I feel. Immediately address those feelings. I guarantee you, you will open up something in your spouse's life that you haven't seen. Now, you used to deal with that when you were dating, right? Because you wanted to know how they felt about you. Mm-hmm. Once that becomes a hardcore relationship, some of that goes away, right? But if you'll do that, I promise you, you will start seeing your relationships, your communication with your teenager at home. If you'll listen, and teenagers don't always want to talk to you about their feelings, but there are moments of time where they will open up to you about their heart. It might be past your bedtime. You might have to sacrifice a little bit of your sleep time as an officer to lay beside of your teenager in their floor, in their bedroom, and know the key moments when they're opening up to you, but they will start talking to you about what they believe or how they feel. If you go to bed and say, I got to go to bed, I got to work, then what you're saying is I'm choosing other people over you. No, Pastor, you don't understand that. I'm working part-time. I'm bringing that money home. I'm trying to give them the best life possible. Ask your teenager what they want more. That extra check you're making, or your heart and your words of wisdom when you're laying in the floor, and that closeness they feel with you and how you portray the voice of God in their life to help them know they're loved and cared for and keep them on the right track. I've had to live it.
Little R&R tip there.
Little R&R tip.
Well, thanks so much for everything.
Man.
I'm looking forward to the next time of us getting together and digging more into this word,
That's
the
right.
truth.
The truth. And don't forget, hey, all of you that are listening, all of our friends, if you're not our friend yet, I pray you will be. We love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I'm so grateful to be with you be able to share and learn and gain. I mean, I'm learning every day. So appreciate you. Appreciate your heart for those who serve along with you. I'm pleased to serve along with you. I love you. And we'll be back.
We'll stay at it.
Got another one coming up.
Revealed.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. Rick and I trust that you heard something that will help your life. And if you believe that it would help others, please make sure and share. Like and subscribe and hit that bell so that you can be notified when the next podcast is available. God bless you, and we'll see you soon.